Thanks very much, Dave. Good morning. It's lovely to be here with you. This is my first time in the building, so if this is your first time, thanks for keeping me company. As Dave said, I live and work in Bristol, and Monday to Friday, you usually find me either out and about, talking to people, or at home. I've got a little study in my house where I live, and it's one of those new build houses. It's a bit like the ones kind of behind here, I think I saw when I parked. And one of the planning conditions was it's got solar panels on the roof. The reason I'm telling you this is because if you were a fly on the wall in my house when I'm there kind of working away in my study, you'd see something slightly strange happen when the sun comes out, which is I will put down basically whatever I'm doing and get up and go wander all the way around the house, switching everything on. I'll go and put a load of washing in the washing machine, tumble dryer goes on. You have that thing where the dishwasher's half full, you can't quite figure out if you're allowed to put it on or not. And then there's 5 glasses next to one bedside. Shove that on. See, to me, light equals free electricity. And, free electricity is not to be sniffed at these days, is it? Light equals free electricity. Anyway, I was working away this week and preparing to come down, thinking about this idea of light and life, what we've been talking about this morning so far. And I realized to say that light equals free electricity is kind of underselling it a bit, isn't it? If the sun went out, it's still there, but just it goes out, I've got bigger problems than having to pay my electricity bill. I did a bit of Googling. So, this is Google. You have to take it with quite a big pinch of salt. This might be wrong. You can come tell me afterwards. But apparently, if the sun went out, within a week, the average surface temperature of the world would be minus 20. Within a year, it's minus 70. And, all the plants would die, of course. Apparently, there are some plants that don't need light. But that's only because they eat other plants. So they'd die eventually. And, you just put to one side the whole new ice age apocalypse thing. It'd be miserable, wouldn't it? It'd be really miserable. It'd be like February, but worse, for a really long time. Just darkness. It'd be miserable. Light and life, they're inseparable. We recognize it, don't we, in the world? And interestingly, that is exactly the way the Bible speaks as well. I've not met most of you. I don't know what you think about God. I don't know if you think there is a God. But the claim of the Bible is that there is a God, and he made the world, as we were talking about earlier. And on page 1 of the Bible, when he makes the world, the first thing that he makes is light. God said, "Let there be light." And then from that light, he goes on and he creates this rich world full of, more types of flower than you can name, and funny little insects that have got too many legs, it seems, and birds that can fly in a flock of 1,000,000 without crashing into each other, and whales that sing, and armadillos and aardvarks and things like that just because they're funny to look at, and people like us who love each other and who enjoy it, and enjoy it all from the God who gave it to us. But the first thing he does is he creates light. Light, it's the source of life, isn't it? We recognize it. That's how the Bible describes it. And in the next few minutes, what I want to do is just look at a few words that Jesus spoke. And they're written in the Bible by a guy called John. John is he's one of Jesus' kind of closest friends, closest followers. He went everywhere with him. He saw what he did. He heard what he said, and he wrote it down. And if you've got a Bible, you might want to turn to page, I scribbled it down on the church Bibles, I think it's 1073. It's John chapter 8, verse 12, and I think we've got the words up on the screen as well. John chapter 8. Verse 12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." That's a pretty bold claim, isn't it? That is a pretty bold claim. Jesus is claiming to be the source of life. My life, my children's lives, your lives. It's a bold claim. And it was a bold claim back in the day, particularly because of where Jesus says it. He's actually at a festival. Genuinely, he's at a festival. Everyone came, they lived in tents for a week. And it's called the Feast of Booths. Admittedly, it's a religious festival, so it's not quite what we're imagining. But he's at a festival, and it's the festival where God's people get together, and they celebrate, and they remember that God is the God of light who gave them the life that they're enjoying in the land they live in. And they remember God's promises that God is the God of light who promised them life with him forever. Jesus is at the festival of God's life and light, and he goes and he stands up on the final night. And apparently on the final night of this festival, they'd light up the big temple in the middle of the city, the kind of religious building. They'd light the whole thing up with lights, and everyone would stay up all night. And Jesus goes to this place, this festival, and he stands up and he says, I'm the light of the world. It would be like me going to Glastonbury, wouldn't it? And, somehow getting past all the security guards and running up onto the big pyramid stage on the final night, crowd of 200,000 people who've just had a week celebrating music and going, I am music. It's a big claim. But that's actually only the half of it. Let's look back at those words. See, Jesus, having said that he's the light of the world, then says that he is the light in the darkness. I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. If light and life go together, then we instinctively get what Jesus means when he talks about darkness, don't we? Are you afraid of the dark? No, seriously. Are you afraid of the dark? I think we've all got a reason to be a little bit afraid of the dark. Not in the way that children are afraid of the dark, but in the way that we feel when we see a video come out. Those videos shot on people's phones of people being pulled out from rubble in Syria and Turkey, trapped in tiny spaces in the dark for days. Or do you remember the kind of news sensation a few years ago that was those 12 boys in Thailand and their coach? It was a football team, the Wild Boars football team, who got trapped in a cave underground. Do you remember that? Their coach, he'd taken them caving, and they were 800 meters underground when suddenly floodwater starts filling the cave that they're in. And apparently they went and they found the highest bit of ground that they could, and with their bare hands, they just started digging back. And they dug 5 meters back just into the soil and created this little ledge. And they climbed up onto it and just sat there in the dark, not a single pinprick of light, for 10 days. Can you imagine how that must have felt? There's an amazing video of the guy who found them. He goes diving through the water to get them, and he's got a torch and a GoPro on his helmet, and he comes up out of the water and shines this light onto these boys and their coach just sitting there. And they get up, and you know what they say to him? Thank you. Yeah, I bet they did. Thank you. The second thing they say to him is, how long have we been here? They completely lost track of time. It must have felt like eternity sitting in the dark. We're right to be afraid of the dark. Of course we are. You don't have to live that long, do you, before you experience what darkness feels like. Powerlessness, pain, heartache, hopelessness, grief. I don't need to tell you, I'm sure I don't need to tell you what darkness feels like. In fact, I'm sure there's lots of you in this room who could tell me a thing or two about what darkness feels like. And here's the remarkable thing. I painted this world earlier, of a picture of this world as, a world of funny little insects with too many legs, and animals that are just funny to look at, and birds that fly in flocks of a million. The world that we live in, it's a world of light and life, but it's inescapably a world where there's darkness too. And that is also exactly how the Bible describes it. My experience of reading the Bible has been, the more that I read it, the more I find it describes the world really very accurately. Jesus says, "Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness." That is how it feels sometimes, isn't it? And sometimes the description the Bible gives is so accurate that it's actually a little bit uncomfortable, I find. If I'm honest, the thing that scares me about darkness most is not the darkness itself. It's what darkness might be hiding. There's a reason, isn't there, that the bits of the internet that you don't want to go anywhere near are called the dark web. There's a reason that we worry about our friends and our family walking home on their own late at night. See, darkness is where evil can hide. And that is exactly how Jesus describes it. John records him in John chapter 3, earlier in this book, just saying to this guy, light has come into the world. He's talking about himself. He says, light has come into the world, but the world loved darkness instead of light because its deeds were evil. He's saying people choose darkness instead of light because they don't want their deeds to be exposed. We rightly want things to be brought into the light, don't we? We want the people who are responsible for failing to earthquake-proof buildings in Syria and Turkey, that they were paid to earthquake-proof. We want them to face justice. We want the government officials who allowed that corruption to continue for years and years and allowed political instability and wars to kind of form this place where that disaster could happen. We want them to be brought into the light. That's how we describe it. On that day when those Thai boys were rescued, I wonder if there was one guy who thought twice about coming out of the darkness into the light. It was the coach who was responsible for taking 12 young teenage boys 800 meters underground at the start of monsoon season and getting them stuck. It was the coach who was responsible for this kind of multi-million-pound worldwide effort as everyone descended and tried to rescue these boys. The coach who's going to have to come up and face the cameras and the questions and face the parents. I wonder if he thought about just staying there. And we know here, actually, he was feeling a bit like this because while they were doing the rescue, they were trying to work out how to get everyone out. And they sent divers back and forth underground through the water with food and water and fresh air, oxygen, and things like this to keep everyone alive while they figured out what to do. And one of the things they did is they sent paper through and got the boys to write notes to their parents and bring them back. And the coach wrote a note to the parents as well. It just said, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." You and I probably aren't about to put our local football team in danger, are we? If you're planning a caving trip, think twice. But yeah, we're probably not putting football teams in danger or local schools in danger. We're probably not responsible for government corruption and failing to earthquake-proof buildings, are we? But I know in my heart there are things that I have had to say I'm sorry for. I can think of things as recent as yesterday where I had to say, I'm really sorry. We can take this beauty that God has given us, can't we? This world of life and light and joy. And we can take it sometimes and take it away from him and try and live the good life on our own, without him, without reference to him. And, well, more often than not, I just make a bit of a mess of it, if I'm honest. When Jesus says, "Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness," if there's a bit of us that is feeling, I don't know how I feel about following Jesus, there's a bit of us that is hesitant of what God might be right to say to us. That's what Jesus is talking about here. We can feel sometimes like there are things that we've done that we would rather keep in the dark. I'd rather keep those things that I had to say sorry for, even yesterday, in the dark. I don't really want to tell you about them. And sometimes we can feel that before God. We'd rather stay in the dark. I wonder if that Thai coach ever did feel like, I might just stay down here. I might stay in the dark. Better than having to face the cameras and the questions. But that's not how the world was feeling about him, was it? Do you remember it? Do you remember how it was reported? It was such a heartwarming moment. It was this incredible moment of the world just kind of rallying round and people pouring down onto this little corner of Thailand to rescue these boys and their coach. I read about a local laundry where people would stay. They'd work all day, they'd work their shifts, and then they'd drive to the site and pick up the clothes from the guys who were working in the rescue effort and take them back to work and work all night and get their friends to come and help them and launder their clothes and dry them and fold them and deliver them back to the site so that the guys who were working there had fresh clothes to wear in the morning. Thousands of local delivery places just sent meals in for free. Taxi drivers were shuttling people to and fro for absolute free. And people were descending from all corners of the world with experience to rescue these boys and their coach. There was a guy called Samam Gunnan. He was an ex-Thai Navy SEAL, had loads of experience in diving. He'd retired, but when he heard what had happened to these boys, he came straight out of retirement, straight over to the site and said, "I'm here, what can I do? I'll go down into the darkness to try and help get them out." And he was on the team of guys who were kind of shuttling back and forth with all these supplies. He was taking oxygen to the boys to keep them alive, to all the other rescuers working to keep them alive. And on one trip where he was taking oxygen, he went ahead, he delivered it, and on his way back, he ran out of oxygen, and he died. If that coach was ever in doubt that he was wanted back in the light, Samam's death is the clearest demonstration. If talk of following Jesus makes us hesitate, it is his death that is the clearest demonstration that he wants us to come into the light. He wants us back. Jesus, you see, he claims that he is the light of the world who stepped into darkness to bring us out of darkness. In John's Gospel, we could read of Jesus. Everywhere he goes, he gets followed by people of every sort of disease and difficulty. He saw more suffering and pain in his life, as short as it was, than most of us are ever likely to see. We read of him at the bedside of a little girl who's died, whose parents are distraught. We meet him at the tomb of a friend who he loves, weeping. But he didn't just come and just kind of observe darkness. No, you see, he stepped into darkness. He experienced it. At this festival, Jesus stands up on the main stage, as it were, grabs the microphone and says, "I'm the light of the world." And people just pick up bottles and start chucking them at him, like stones back in the day. And it's not because they want to scare him off, it's because they want to kill him. And that's what happens to him. The religious authorities, they pay one of his friends to betray him. They arrest him. At that point, all the rest of his friends run away. It turns out they only needed to pay one friend. They drag him through an absolute mock trial. They flog him, they beat him, they humiliate him, they strip him, and they nail him to a few bits of wood and hang him up like a bit of meat to die. When Jesus says, "Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness," he knows what he's talking about. It's not like religious rhetoric from a distance. It's not political poetry made to inspire us. He actually stepped into darkness for us. See, this is Jesus' claim. He came to offer us life. Look with me one more time at these verses. Jesus says, "Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." What makes a light a light? What makes a light a light? It's that when you put it in darkness, darkness goes away. What makes Jesus the light of life? It's that when Jesus steps into darkness, steps down even into the darkness of death, the darkness goes away. The darkness can't contain him, it can't overcome him. The big claim of the Bible is Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus is the light that shines in the darkness. And that is very, very good news for us. Because the reality is, we've all got those things where we would like to leave them in the dark. We might feel like we would like to hide from God even. But how do you hide from the one who made light? You know, to think that we can hide from God is actually, it's to be like the kid who smashed the vase with his football and is standing in the middle of the broken pieces and just puts his hands over his eyes and shuts his eyes and thinks that he's hiding from his parents. Jesus is God, acting toward us like the parent who comes and kneels down amongst the broken pieces and lifts the hand off their child's eyes and looks them in the eye and says, "I'll fix it. I'll pay for it. I forgive you." Jesus is the light of the world. And when he steps into the world, into darkness, and experiences our pain and dies, he is kneeling amongst our broken pieces, saying, "I will take responsibility for all those things that you would rather leave in the dark, all those things that you would like to hide. I'll pay for it. I'll fix it. I forgive you." You can open your eyes now. Come on, it's okay. Come with me. Follow me. "I'm the light of the world," Jesus says. "Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Let me ask us, what will we choose? What will we choose? To walk in darkness, or to follow Jesus and have the light of life? I'm going to pray, and I'm just talking to God. Listen in, and if you agree, feel free to say amen. It just means I agree. And God hears you. And if that's the first time that you've ever prayed like that, please do, let someone who invited you here know, or come and chat to Dave or myself. We'd love to chat to you. But let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for making a world of life and giving us life. Father, we find this world is full of pain and darkness as well, and we admit that we've played our part in that. We're sorry for when we've taken the life that you gave us and ignored you and made a mess of things. Thank you so much for sending Jesus into the world as the light of life. Thank you that he can save us from the darkness that we fear. Thank you that he can forgive us for the pain that we've caused and the way that we've treated you. We believe that Jesus is how you have acted in history to forgive us and to give us life again. Please, Father, forgive us and give us this life that lasts forever.